It is a red ocean, I guess, but it's okay if you're a shark. So, the idea is that, be sharp, be aggressive, understand the dynamic that you're in, which is somebody has to lose market share for you to gain market share. And one of the things we talk a lot about at the company is in developing markets, there's another billion gamers in mobile coming through South Asia, Africa, South America, the Middle East. Those are very hot markets that are starting to develop.
Hello and welcome to the Game Business Show. This week we're delving into the world of mobile with Zynga, one of the most influential mobile game companies in the world. And specifically we're talking to CEO Frank Gibeau, who spent nearly 24 years in various leadership roles at EA before taking charge of Zynga in 2016. He played a pivotal role in turning that business around before leading it through its acquisition by Take-Two in 2022. Frank, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Christopher. It's great to be here.
Your business came up when I spoke to Strauss only last month, and he called out a couple of recent successes that you had. I think Match Factory was the one he brought up, but also Color Block Jam, I think, as they've both done very well for you. I thought I'd start by asking about those, because I know it's notoriously hard to launch new things in mobile in 2025. So congratulations for what made these work.
No, thank you very much. Both games are built out of Istanbul, one by Peak and one by our studio at Rollic. And I think what they represent is Zynga's new approach to game development on mobile. We're going very rapid in terms of our prototyping, our testing. We're using a lot of techniques to allow us to mix and match things that will allow us to get the right types of KPIs from the audience, click-through rates, retention, engagement, monetization. So we've been really looking at the market and observing why things are working, why things are not working. We've learned from some of our hits and some of our misses, and we've applied this new approach, which is inspired by some of the things that the hyper-casual guys do. Those types of companies like Rollic are very used to generating tons and tons of ideas, going into rapid testing and understanding how to separate potential hits from what are most likely to be misses. So we've combined a few of those different techniques into an approach, and it's working okay so far. We have both games out. They're both in the puzzle category. They've both reached very large audiences, and from a financial standpoint, they've been very, very positive. The quality of the games are both very high. And one of the things that, I've been in the industry a long time like yourself, just when somebody thinks they've got it all figured out or something's not going to work, you get a curveball or you get a new idea or you get a new approach that allows you to kind of unlock the market again. I know there was a lot of discussion and debate about how hard it is to launch new titles on mobile. But if you look around at Dream, at Scopely, at Zynga and others, there's a fairly large number of new titles hitting the marketplace and finding very large audiences for the first time post-COVID.
I'm going to dig into this development approach. Does it work exactly like it does in hyper-casual in terms of how you're greenlighting new projects and highlighting new projects? Can you go a little bit deeper? Tell me how that works.
Well, I think what we try and do is shake it up a bit, where understand what is the hardest thing to do in mobile. It's to find an audience that you can grow and that's profitable. And so what we've done is looked at how ad model driven hyper-casual games went into the marketplace and found footing and momentum. And then we changed the mix on the monetization to IP, and then we tweaked some things in terms of how we would actually test. So it's inspired by and started with that foundation. But then we started to look for what are the things that you need to solve for that is different than hyper-casual, which would be engagement, long-term engagement and retention, and then a shift from ad model to IP. So our data science and product management teams combined with the studios developed a series of techniques using, a lot of good designers and engineers, but also a lot of new ML and AI techniques to allow us to rapidly test not only the game design, but also how does it stack, how does it scale, and what does the market look like overall in terms of receptivity on an organic level. So it's a variety of techniques. I don't want to give away the secret sauce here.
Secrets.
But it was a pretty interesting set of things that we looked at over the last 8 or 9 months that has really proven to be successful for us.
I guess it might be the same thing in many ways, but have you made any changes to your user acquisition approach in terms of...
We have.
Yeah.
We have. We've looked at some new channel partners. We found certain channels and combinations to be more predictive than others. And so we've focused more of our testing in some of those areas.
There's a couple of things you said I want to pick on. I'm trying to work out which one to start with. Actually, I'll pivot to Take-Two, because I haven't spoken to Zynga since the acquisition, really. And I know usually Take-Two leave their divisions alone. They leave Rockstar to be Rockstar, 2K to be 2K. But what's the collaboration with you like?
It's very similar. We work together with Take-Two on an annual business plan, on the strategy of the company, multi-year strategy. There's a lot of collaboration with Take-Two senior leadership as well as Zynga. They act very much like a board of directors. We present our plans and then we go off and execute. And then we utilize the resources of Take-Two to basically scale the business or do more with the business that we couldn't do when we were an independent company in many ways. We have access to more intellectual properties. We have access to technology and other systems. They've been benefiting from a lot of the investments that we've made in data science and AI, also in terms of mobile direct stores and things like that. So there's probably at least half a dozen material collaboration points between the two companies that was really a lot of the things that Strauss and I first talked about when we started to explore the opportunity of coming together as one company. I'm very pleased with how we've come together. The integration is complete. It went very smoothly. We found ourselves to be very culturally compatible, as well as the operating model that you described gives Zynga the opportunity to continue to chase mobile in the most effective way possible, but at the same time leveraging the resources and talent of a much larger company. And that's so far the thesis for the combination has proven to be true.
Is there more to come? Where does the collaboration go next?
Well, I think we're growing faster together. We are in a position where intellectual property from Take-Two will start to find its way to mobile. We're starting to see the techniques and approaches that we use via AI, ML, data science, direct to consumer. That's propagating back into Take-Two. So I think you'll continue to see that incrementally scale up over time. And the ambition is, look, we want Zynga to be the #1 mobile game company in the world. And we want to reach the largest audiences worldwide, have the most, franchises, and generate great returns for shareholders. And that's going to continue to be the mission.
One of the things that you touched upon there was some of Take-Two's IP. And obviously that's a big conversation point at the moment around how traditional PC and console brands might be able to utilize mobile to grow. And we've seen games that have been completely bespokely made for mobile audiences. We've seen games that have sort of been adapted a little bit. And a lot of this is targeting new markets where there isn't a PC and console industry really, which is exciting. But how big do you think that opportunity really is? There's a little bit differing opinion on that whenever I speak to people.
I think there's an opportunity for it, no question, but the last few years is littered with examples of it not working, where it's brought over in a very conventional and expected way, and it's not fit for purpose for how mobile games are played. You have to look at how are your players going to engage with the content on a mobile device as they move through their day. It's lots of little sessions many times. It's places where some of the features around PvP don't work the same way in terms of how you play against each other. So there's a lot of nuance in how you have to redesign the content in the player experience so that it maximizes what mobile brings to bear. If you just bring it over and play it as you would on a PlayStation, it doesn't work. It doesn't scale. The audience size doesn't necessarily always generate. It can work as a premium product, but as a free-to-play live service that can last years, you have to rethink how the intellectual property will work on this device. And I think you're starting to see that type of work happen, and that's certainly how we think about it.
Mm. The phones are starting to become a lot more capable in terms of graphically what they're able to do. But we had Matthew Ball on the show a couple of months ago, and we talked about the Resident Evil example, about how those games they've just basically tried to port Resident Evil over to mobile and it hasn't quite worked. But he thinks that could work in the future if we get to a point where they're being launched at the same time and they're sort of targeting broader audiences. I'm not so convinced. We had a bit of a debate around that.
I don't subscribe to that. I don't think it's another platform like the Switch or the Xbox or the PlayStation where you're looking at a multi-platform launch, which I've done a lot in my career when I was at Electronic Arts. It fundamentally plays different and it serves a different entertainment need. That doesn't mean that they can't be linked or cross-play. There's good examples of that working at scale with things like PUBG and other titles. But I think when you're talking about a linear game or a game that's narrative-based, predominantly single player, those are the ones that are a little bit more tricky to bring over. And in general, games that have a free-to-play business model versus a premium model tend to do better on mobile because you reach larger audiences globally. And so you have to decide, is the intellectual property appropriate for that type of business model. Many IPs are not. And so it's really looking at the nuance of how you can go wrong in mobile, trying to figure out if the audience will give the permission for that intellectual property to be applied that way or be developed that way. That's also an interesting component, is sometimes you'll get, I just don't see it happening that way, or they don't want to engage with it. And player's the ultimate judge, so you got to take that into account, of course. And so from my perspective, I think that it is absolutely true that broad-based AAA IPs will be successful on mobile and can be successful on mobile, but I do believe that you have to be almost restart at the fundamentals to understand how people are going to engage with it. If it's just your PlayStation game on your phone, you're not going to play for 45 minutes to get through a level on your mobile device. You got power, you got, where are you? Are you on the bus? Are you at school? Are you at work? You're getting text messages while you're playing, work emails are coming in, whatever, right? So you have to understand that this is a multifunctional device that's mobile, that's part of your busy life. And when you want to bring that intellectual property over, you want to be able to do it in a way that makes it's very accessible and very fit for purpose for how you engage with mobile games. Our player audience are busy adults. That's the majority of mobile gamers are people that don't consider themselves, quote, gamers. They play games, but they don't really think of it as a major part of their identity. Most of the games at Zynga are casual in nature. Most of our players are women. But even for the games like CSR that are a little bit more traditional, it's a very different take on racing, right? It's not a high-end simulation experience where you're doing the Nuremberg Ring for 14 minutes on your phone, right? So, you're actually collecting cars, you're upgrading, you're doing quick races. It's actually designed much more for the device. And that's why I think CSR reaches such a large audience and has been so successful. I mean, CSR2 is 8 years old now and still doing very well. It's entertaining millions of people every day. And so I think it's because it's a racing game that's rethought for mobile as opposed to just brought over.
We did our event, the Game Business Live in LA in June, and we had Blizzard on stage, and they'd just done Diablo Immortal, which I guess is a good example of that, because that game was built from they didn't just port Diablo across.
Right.
They took what was core of Diablo and then built a bespoke mobile game for that experience. And as a result, they have more people. That's most people's first Diablo experience.
Right.
It's not Diablo fans they're targeting. It's a different audience, as you were just talking about there.
I think that's an excellent point. Conventional wisdom would have been, every Diablo player has a phone, therefore they will play Diablo on their phone. They didn't. Diablo came over to the phone. It was a different experience. It was fit for purpose, and it found an all new audience and generated an incremental experience and for that intellectual property in that franchise. But I think the initial kind of expectations were probably misplaced as a result of that. It's just going to bring over and play just like the other one. It didn't.
No. Are you having to do that education or having those discussions with other Take-Two divisions, departments at the moment, or is that a future thing?
Yeah, we talk a lot about this stuff at the company, and it is a topic that we discuss quite a bit in terms of what makes sense. So for some of the intellectual properties that we have, they're brought over very directly and are premium products on device, and those are good businesses and those work fine. Examples are like Grand Theft Auto and obviously NBA 2K.
Yes.
But then there's other intellectual properties that we discuss that might be able to reach a larger audience as a live service, as a free-to-play experience, and we have this conversation in relation to those.
Okay. We're talking quite positively, but there's been a few things that haven't worked out lately. And one of the things, you've just closed Echtra Games. Mm-hmm. When you acquired that business, I remember you talking about it being part of your cross-platform vision or strategy. Has your views on that opportunity changed?
It has. Certainly as part of Take-Two, the need for Zynga to be able to go after that isn't a top priority. Those resources and that approach made much more sense in another part of the company or as part of another endeavor. Our view was to focus exclusively on the mobile platform. It's over half of the total business of games. It's a growing audience. There's, one of the things we talk a lot about at the company is in developing markets, there's another billion gamers in mobile coming through South Asia, Africa, South America, the Middle East. Those are very hot markets that are starting to develop. They're pre-monetization, but they're opportunities. So when you think about going onto the PlayStation or the Xbox for Zynga, that's not as precious as 2K and Rockstar doing that. Mm. And what's more important is for us to go after the opportunity in mobile where, frankly, our expertise and our talent and our capabilities are strongest. And so that was part of a thoughtful conversation with Take-Two about how do we deprioritize that strategy relative to some other opportunities that were larger for us. And that's a function of becoming part of Take-Two. I think it's negative, sure, the decision and the impact, but at the same time, I think for the team and for the company, it's the right call. And obviously, anytime we divest a business or start to look at not doing something, we handle it in a very transparent and professional manner with everyone.
You also, last year, I think you backed out of Sugartown. I think I've got the name of that right.
Yes.
Which is the Web3 blockchain thing. Is that also an area that's no longer a focus for you?
It's not. One of the things that's true about Zynga is that if a market is starting to develop, we like to build product for it to see if it works. So a good example was Facebook Instant. We built games for when, hey, can you build games for social, chat, text type capability platforms? And so we built a game there. And in fact, Words with Friends is still running on Messenger and doing well. It was the same case here, which was there was a lot of discussion and debate about blockchain and NFTs and can that be part of an entertainment experience? There'd been a couple of examples of companies that built some interesting and valuable franchises. So we embarked on building a product to see what types of things worked, what didn't work. And ultimately, we found that it wasn't the right opportunity for us at this time. The technology is very interesting, but it's a very complex and undeveloped market, let's just say, legally. And so from our perspective, it was worthwhile going through the exercise. We learned a lot. But at the same time, we felt that we really weren't able to build something significant there. So we moved on to other ideas. But that's part of our culture is build something, to see if it works as opposed to, debate over PowerPoints.
Yeah. Well, have you been looking into Telegram at all or Discord or those other emerging areas that people are looking into at the moment?
We haven't announced anything, but if you take what I said earlier, it is, we're always looking for audience. And, obviously, if you look at TikTok, the emergence of Discord, the emergence of Telegram, there's a lot of new platforms out there that people are spending time on. And we believe that interactive experiences are compelling. And if the platform is technically capable and we're able to figure out how to distribute and reach audience, then we'll definitely go after that. So anytime new platforms develop, we're interested in checking them out.
Okay. It sounds like I'm just asking harsh questions now, but I promise I've got some more positivities coming.
This is fine.
But I'm interested to know, because I saw early doors Star Wars Hunters and I thought that looked quite exciting, but it didn't seem to have worked out. What didn't work there?
Well, I think we built a great tech base and we built a fun game with a great core loop. Problem was it wasn't a viable business. We weren't able to generate the organic installs from the license. We had some issues with how we could explore the intellectual property in the game. Could you play Darth Vader? Could you not? That sort of thing. And ultimately what we found was we ended up with a cross-platform game on Switch and mobile that ran perfectly. It was fun, but it didn't engage over the long term, and it wasn't a viable business. And so one of the things that you find in running studios and game teams is sometimes you'll miss on the first shot, but there's something of value in it. You learn something about the market. You also learn about your team. And then ultimately, you have many times some great leads and a great tech base, but we didn't quite get there commercially. And so we're looking at another idea in that category. The action shooter category on mobile is a very large and growing category, and we'd like to be there. And now that we have an Unreal-based tech base with some great leads in terms of the engineering and developers and designers, now it's take the learnings from Star Wars Hunters and apply it to another shot on goal with another intellectual property.
Ian Livingston in the UK, he calls it, there's no such thing as failure. It's all just success, work in progress, which is
I love that. I'm going to use that.
Well, I always think the Wii U is the best example of that, right?
Yeah.
It was a complete failure, but without it, we wouldn't have had the Switch.
Yeah, we don't really consider them failures at the company, right? So we have, to the point that you made earlier in this conversation, it's very difficult to get new products out on mobile in a successful way. So you're going to have a lot of misses, and you have to have a strong stomach, and you have to have a culture for learning that's oriented to, hey, it missed. Why did it miss? Why don't we try this instead? And so for every game that doesn't reach its full potential in the market, we go back, post-mortem it, figure out what went right, what went wrong on the team, on the tech, on the go-to-market, any number of reasons that we look at. And then we apply that and share that learning across the company. One of the things that is really important to Zynga is sharing across teams. We have a very distributed and decentralized studio organization, each with their own identities. We believe that leads to the best games, but the way that you get better as a company is you break down the walls of not sharing the data. Everybody at Zynga can see the data on Toon Blast and understand why the latest release on Toon Blast has been incredible. They have all the data on Color Block Jam. They have all the data on Match Factory. And so game teams that are working on new games, or even game teams on live services, are sharing and looking at those techniques and being inspired by it. So when a new game comes out from a particular studio and is a big hit, everybody gets better because of it. If a game comes out and misses for whatever reason, everybody gets better because of it, because they see that mistake and they're able to apply it in their business or avoid it in that case.
We talked about it a little bit, but I would love to understand a bit more. When you've got a new project that's out there, or when you're in you haven't quite greenlit the project or it hasn't quite gone live, how do you decide which ones go forward and which ones don't? I know you do all these tests, but what determines go or not go?
Well, I think a couple of things. In fact, this is just part of a conversation we had this week as a company. All of the studios have their own individual approaches to new game development. There's some tools and techniques and platforms that they can use that can aid their decision making. But ultimately, Small Giant builds games differently at the earliest stages than Peak, than Natural Motion, than Graham, for example. So our view is that's a good thing. We get a lot of different cultures and teams taking approaches on a problem. The challenge is, though, you have to be consistent in understanding, is it a viable business? There's a million ways you can build a very fun game that engages players, but is difficult to monetize. And as much as that's cool, we are in the business of a business. And so we have very clear and kind of objective milestones, very few milestones, there's only 2, that go through to prove whether the game is a viable business. And so we're kind of like, hey, do it however you want to do it, but these are the 2 gates you have to get through. And we have to see these types of results in order to prove to the company that this is a great place to deploy some capital. At one level, my job is the most boring job ever because I'm a capital allocation manager. I just decide where people and money go to make, to build audiences and make money, right? That's making it really sound boring. So my view is that when you look at mobile games, the capital intensity is in the marketing, not in the development. It's the reverse in console. Console, it's very expensive. It's very difficult to know if you have a great game as you're developing it. In mobile, in a matter of weeks with a very small number of people and a small amount of money, you can quickly understand if you have an idea and a core loop that will connect with somebody, will connect with an audience. And then what you do is you try and understand, okay, is this a business that we can actually scale? And so that's where the business testing comes in, and it's further along in development. But ultimately, those are really important steps because the majority of the capital that you expend in mobile is on marketing. And it's a performance-based marketing model, so you can turn it off if it's not working. So it's very flexible. It's actually lower risk capital versus R&D capital. And so, at a basic level, when you're thinking about it, that's ultimately what we're doing. Now, the fun part is, hey, I'm making a game. We're going after this. You're doing all this cool creative stuff. But part of the discipline is understanding those undercurrents of what you're actually trying to do and how it's moving through a studio system, for example.
And I know Zynga's always gone direct to consumer. I say always. I know it's not a new thing for you. But obviously, there's the recent ruling around the App Store in the US, and that perhaps makes it even less, there's less friction, I guess, for your users to come direct to you. Does that change anything to you other than potentially improve your margins?
Well, look, I think it's a profound change in the platform. The notion that you can have a direct relationship with your players and serve them better and give them more value is huge. So it's not just about making more margin from the platforms because we're going direct. We can perform better CRM. We can build better communities. We can understand more clearly what's happening in the games because while we get a lot of telemetry, sometimes you just like to ask a question, and see how things are doing. So the idea that we can communicate directly with our players in a much more direct manner is going to create a more valuable relationship between the developers and their players. And at the same time, we're going to be able to serve them faster, more efficiently, and generate more value for them ultimately. That will create more profit for the company, which would allow us to invest more money in development, more money in user acquisition so we can scale games better. And it also allows us to be more profitable as a business. So this is, whether they're APKs on Android or the recent changes to iOS in North America, thanks to the court case with Epic, this is a big change for mobile. It's been something that we've been going after very aggressively. I know that that Strauss has talked about it on earnings calls about how significant this has become. It's only going to get bigger and it's only going to be more important long term, but it's not just a money play.
No.
It is really about the CRM and the community and VIP relationships that we can have with our players.
I think there's an element of the app stores weren't, maybe early doors, they were delivering that value, right? So the fees, the tax, whatever you want to use it, you're comfortable paying it because you were getting that value back. And I just feel like in the last, I'm not going to put a number on it, but whatever years, you've not been getting that value. And I think that's a problem for the whole market. And this whole thing should hopefully be a good thing for everybody, including Apple, in terms of growing that ecosystem.
I agree. I wouldn't dispute what you just said.
No.
In the early days, getting App Store placement was a godsend for generating organics, and you could build hits by getting that placement and that merchandising on the app stores. It just isn't true anymore. And so when you look at the marketing and the value that you would generate from some of those programs, it's diminished completely. And so the question is how much value am I getting for these fees? They're just not in balance anymore. And so with this change, I think we're going to be able to invest in the business more aggressively, reach new audiences and create more value for players, which is a good thing. And that's very much our belief. And I think that this is going to be a tailwind for Zynga for many years.
So changing the subject slightly, you've worked with, we mentioned Star Wars earlier, but you've also got IP partnerships with brands like Game of Thrones and Harry Potter and stuff like that. How significant are those to your overall business and performance?
It's a pretty good portion of our portfolio, but it has been declining. As we launched intellectual properties like Color Block Jam or Match Factory, the percentage of the overall portfolio that is licensed has been declining. Strauss has been very clear that Take-Two's primary objective is to create intellectual properties that are wholly owned. And that is absolutely the bias at Zynga as well. That doesn't mean that our partnerships with Harry Potter or Game of Thrones aren't valuable and things that we're investing in. But as we look at new projects to greenlight, our point of view is that we can reach audiences without the benefit of a license, probably cheaper and more efficiently, because much of reaching audiences now is about ad creative. How many ads can I put out that are tailored and specialized? How can I experiment? And when you're working with somebody else's intellectual property, it's very difficult to be generating 300 ads a week, pushing it through their systems for legal approval. Or can I do this? Can I do that? So in many ways, those guardrails and that inefficiency that's built in working with a partner is particularly painful in how dynamic the market has become. But having said that, I think, there's clear examples like Monopoly Go, like our titles in Harry Potter and Game of Thrones that are reaching very large markets and doing very well. I just don't think it's going to be as significant a portion of our portfolio going forward as it has in the past.
Maybe things are changing with the App Store shifts, but mobile growth has slowed. I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit on the show. What has that meant for you? How has that altered your approach to things, or has it?
To a degree, it has, but the scale of the market is so big now that it's hard to imagine you can see that double-digit growth. You have to kind of break the market apart to start to look for where growth is. Western Europe, North America, single-digit growth. Japan, Korea, same deal. China's a bit harder of a market to get into as a Western developer, so it's big and it's growing fast, but it's got a lot of friction in terms of how you can get in there and build an audience. But then you start to look further afield and you see that India, Middle East, those markets are growing double digits comfortably. And for the long term, those are going to be significant markets for us. Very high performance smart devices are going into those markets that are very inexpensive, mainly from China, but from other manufacturers as well. And really mastering the complexity for those markets is what we're looking at right now. Do we look at geo pricing? How do you localize? How do you culturalize? What are local partners? What are the payment differences in these markets? So mobile isn't declining.
No.
It's growing slower in the Western markets and is growing aggressively from an audience standpoint. In emerging markets, and monetization is lagging, but it'll catch up. And so that's how we kind of perceive it and look at it. The other shift that we think about is this might sound cheeky, but it is a red ocean, I guess, but it's okay if you're a shark. So, the idea is that, be sharp, be aggressive, understand the dynamic that you're in, which is somebody has to lose market share for you to gain market share sometimes. And so that orientation is not something that's unknown to some of us at the company. We've been through it before in other platforms and other industries. So it's more that orientation of, understanding that these are very large markets. Growth isn't as easy as it's just going to fall to us. We have to actually have a really sharp positioning. We have to understand who we're competing with and have a proposition that players are going to love and want to spend time with us. So that it raises the stakes. But when you're a company like Zynga that's at scale, that has a lot of categories, a lot of genres, a lot of platforms, a lot of studios, we have a much better chance of succeeding in that environment than a subscale single product mobile studio that has difficulty reaching capital. I mean, that's another dynamic that I think probably is understood a little bit, but could be talked about more, is there's not a lot of capital coming into gaming.
No.
Most of it's gone into AI or platforms or other things, biotech. And so it's very difficult for small companies to get off the ground with funding to be able to do these things. It doesn't mean that there's not great, talented people out there building games. And I think the indie community on Roblox and on Steam is a great example of where it works. But I think in mobile, where the capital intensity is very high in order to get to a hit, you've really seen that dry up. And so it's become much more of a large company game as opposed to Flappy Bird just came out of nowhere.
I wasn't planning to ask this, but if you're growing in new markets, targeting new territories, it's hard for people to break in. Are you looking to make acquisitions or investments into things that can help you achieve that?
I think we're always looking at inorganic opportunities. It was a powerful part of how Zynga got turned around was acquiring talented developers. So we never say no. I think we have incredible organic growth opportunities. We've got a lot of resources and capability inside the company that's not at its full potential yet. So we typically are looking at organic opportunities right now first, and then if we do discover a partner or an idea or a company in a region or even in kind of our established markets that makes sense, obviously we have that conversation and look at it.
I know that maybe there's been a few that haven't quite worked out, but actually you've had quite a bit of success with acquisitions and partnerships at Zynga, perhaps in contrast to some of the experience you had during your time at EA. That's why I didn't really have a question there, but I do think it's quite interesting that perhaps there was to see that.
Oh. No, absolutely. When I got to Zynga, I took all the learning from Electronic Arts. I mean, my experience at EA was fantastic. I love that company, and I had an amazing career there for over 2 decades. And I learned a lot of great lessons, and I learned a lot from the failures that we had there too. Mm. We had a hero to zero to hero journey at EA, if you remember.
Yeah.
And along the way, I had a lot of experiences that armed me for the Zynga job in ways that were particularly unique. And one of them was in acquisitions, and we took a very much a company first approach to the acquisitions, which was our belief was we're acquiring this company for a reason. They do something amazingly well. They have an incredible culture. They have an incredible product. So do nothing to screw that up. Was kind of the idea.
Yeah.
And so we approached a very light integration approach, and our pitch was we grow faster together, and the acquired companies were able to opt in to whatever they wanted from Zynga. Our pitch was, we work for you. What do you want? A data scientist? Do you need this from product management? We would share data with them about, hey, if you've got a money sink problem inside your economy, we've done that 50 times over here on other games. Here's 5 examples or techniques or tools that you can use. And so it was very much in service of the developers approach. And we always kept a very light central organization at Zynga do. Mm-hmm. We pushed a lot of the resources and decision-making into the field. And that was at its core, the philosophical approach that we undertook. And, we never changed anybody's name to Zynga Finland or something like that. It was Small Giant, or his Peak in Istanbul. And so that approach continues to serve us well because our studios have the creative autonomy and cultural autonomy to continue to prosper and be great places to work.
Microsoft adopts the same model now. After their Minecraft acquisition, after they acquired Mojang, they basically let them be Mojang. Don't ruin Minecraft, leave it alone. And then they've adopted it to all of they did to LinkedIn. It isn't just games acquisition. So it's Yeah, it does seem to be the right approach. I'm conscious of the time, so I'll ask a couple more questions. You were talking about the single-digit growth in the West and the challenges there. And one of the things that seems to be, it used to be a time where games was a rival to everybody else, like film and TV and all the other entertainment mediums were looking at games a bit crossly. Stop taking all our audience and all our time. And now we've got one in terms of like short form video in TikTok and things like that. Mm-hmm. What do we do about that? How do you counter that?
Well, I think I start at the fundamental level, like linear content versus interactive content. I think they both have places in people's lives. They engage and reward you emotionally and creatively and competitively in different ways. So I think that one doesn't obsolete the other necessarily. So that's kind of the first thing I think about. The second thing I think about is what can we learn from these new platforms like TikTok and Reels and other things. What we found is that if you don't set the hook fast in a game, if it's not challenging very quickly, you're gone. So if you're watching quick videos and you're swiping through them quickly, I do this all the time myself, it has to hook you very quickly. And traditionally in mobile games, the thought was, hey, I got to wait 80 levels to get to the challenge, right? I want to ease you in, get you to play. It's a very permissive, nice environment. But what you're finding in interactive right now is games that are more challenging earlier, Elden Ring on console, Color Block Jam on mobile. It sets the hook really fast on this is hard and challenging, and therefore it compels you and you attach to it much quicker. So we think much more aggressively about day 1, 3, and 7 in terms of the user experience and what degree of engagement and frankly monetization as a result of a lot of this short form video that's been coming out. We also mine a lot of it for ideas. If there's a particular type of video that's working or something that's fun and funny, that can be inspiration for a game design or a game concept. So I think there's a symbiotic thing. I think obviously there's a zero sum. I only have so much time in the day. Am I going to watch TikTok videos or get a few turns in on our games? So I think there's going to be kind of a constant one-upsmanship on that. But I think there's a lot of crossover there that people don't necessarily talk about.
We had Twitch on stage at our event I mentioned earlier, and I asked them about what they're doing to counter that. And their answer was nothing at all. We're almost going to push in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And I thought that was also quite an interesting approach too.
Yeah, it's kind of my point. Look, we're interactive, so revel in it. Maximize the fact that it's an interactive experience as opposed to I'm either laughing, shocked, or, compelled to continue, right? Not to be dismissive, but I think those are the things. And then in streaming, I think the most popular channels in streaming are still gaming based, right?
Yeah.
Or a fairly substantial number of them are, and that's complementary in many ways. So again, I think it's here to stay. We look at overall user demographics in terms of what are you watching? Is it up? Is it down? A lot of those studies are difficult to operationalize in an individual product. But you can actually learn from some of the more macro trends by looking at behavior and consumption rates and see if that's applicable to your business.
I'll ask one more question, Frank. I'm conscious of the time. I'd like to end with this one, which is sort of where do you see Zynga in 5 years' time? I still say 10 years a lot of the time, but in this industry, 10 years is absurdly long.
Is tough.
Yeah, it's 10 years, the day game's full stop.
I think 3 is about as far out as you can plan many times. Look, I think we start with the mission of connecting the world through games. That was the founding idea of Zynga. It still is today. We believe that games are essentially a social pursuit and that interactive entertainment is the best form of entertainment. We're biased. And so our pursuit is to continue to chase that dream, to build the number one mobile game company in the world and to increase, someday I'd love to see 1 billion people on a monthly basis, our MAU. And so we're going to continue to chase that dream. We want to entertain people all over the world and expand the business, build more franchises. And really importantly, we want Zynga to continue to be a culture and a destination for people to want to come here to do the best work of their careers and to innovate and to entertain on a scale that you just can't find anywhere else. And so we think of those things over the course of the next 5 years. If there's a new phone, a new platform, if I'm playing games in my glasses, I don't know, but we'll continue to look at platforms and we'll continue to look at where the audience is and try and create a highly connected, highly social entertainment forum.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's all we have time for. Frank, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Great.
For everyone listening or watching, stay tuned to thegamebusiness.com for future episodes. If you've not subscribed to the newsletter, just put in your email and that way you won't miss a show. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. Greatest movie of all time?
Blade Runner.
I like that. If you could be the CEO of any other video games company, what would it be?
Steam.
Or
Valve.
greatest game you've ever worked on?
Battlefield.
Any particular Battlefield?
I was there on all of them pretty much. I think Battlefield 3 or 4 were probably our pinnacles.
Will game streaming ever be a mainstream proposition?
Not for a while.
What's the first thing you do when you get into work in the morning?
I check my moves and Empires and Puzzles, Words with Friends, and play a couple levels of Toon Blast.
I wish I had that job. What's one thing games companies should be thinking about but probably aren't?
The change in how players are playing. I think they're playing differently now. And I think AI is going to disrupt that even more.
We didn't ask about AI, did we?